Hey everyone, back here with another weekly tip and our fancy new backdrop here. This week's topic is professional liability, and I wanted to start with a story that many of you may have heard about, but to really reiterate the importance of professional liability, a mother in November of 2017 was walking with her infant and two of her sons in a stroller in front of her through Central Park in New York City, and actually had a 75-foot American elm tree uproot and fall on top of her. And ultimately, everyone was treated at the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, but the son, the 2-year-old son, had a concussion, and then the mother had 2 fractured vertebrae and is now at risk of becoming a quadriplegic. So what she did was come back to the city of New York, the Central Park Conservatory, and all the contractors involved, and filed a $200 million lawsuit for damages. And we all know the importance of general liability when you're on the job site for any bodily injury or property damage that happens, like dropping a tree branch on a car or a house, or worst case scenario, a person. But oftentimes professional liability goes undermentioned, I'll say. And there are really 4 different types of exposures that I wanted to touch on today, to not just consulting arborists or anything along those lines, but all arborists really. And the first one is professional liability for the work on the tree itself. Did you identify the right tree from what the salesperson sold in the bid? Are you doing the right pruning techniques to make sure that you're not damaging the tree, or that the tree is becoming risky in the future? And the second one is going to be the work in the area. Think about if you're going to a yard, and you guys may have heard of this scenario before, but if you're going into a yard, you're working on a tree in the front yard, and a couple months later a tree in the backyard or on the side of the house falls on the house and causes a bunch of damage, and the homeowner comes back and says, hey, why didn't you do anything to that tree while you are on our job site? And that's where the professional liability will come in, and whether you are responsible or not will help, at the very least, will help with defense costs. The third type of exposure to arborists or arboriculture is going to be the consulting piece. Whether you're consulting with a homeowner on the health of a tree or their tree plan for their yard, or working with a municipality on a tree management plan. Actually, another scenario may be the expert witness work that board certified master arborists or ASCA members, really professional and well-established arborists, may do in court. You need to have a professional liability policy for that. And in fact, an average professional liability policy may not even cover operations like expert witness. So what you would want to do is make sure to have that described in your operations on your policy. If your policy can't cover that, you need to look into a separate professional liability policy for that type of work. The fourth exposure is going to be training. A lot of arborists will do things like OSHA training, climbing, safe climbing practices, proper pruning techniques, things along those lines. And what you're actually going to want for that is educators' errors and omissions policies. Most tree care professional liability policies are only going to cover tree work itself. Things like consulting on the health of a tree, or cutting down the wrong tree, things like that. You may want to, depending on your operations, look into a separate educators' errors and omissions policy. But in short, endpoint, everybody in the arboriculture world needs a professional liability policy. And if you guys aren't sure whether or not your professional liability covers the right things or covers all of your operations, have your agent or an arborist team member look over your policy. And thanks for watching. Everybody stay safe.